I intend raising the issue of FO on the order of business, but could I ask the Taoiseach regarding the unemployment figures that were published yesterday? Now, you said on the 6th of October there has been a significant reduction in unemployment. The Jobs Initiative is working both in respect of reducing the number of people who are unemployed and creating jobs. Do you accept that yesterday's figures show that there is a year-on-year increase of 4,500 people on the live register, and that your policies are not working? And when you dig into the figures, you see that for people over 25 years of age, there's an increase of 9,500, and for those under 25, there's a decrease of nearly 5,000 that's explained by the extraordinary migration in recent months that everybody in the country knows about, of young people out in the country. So that means that the real rate of rise in unemployment far exceeds the headline figure we got yesterday. You've been in government now for 9 months. You talk about unemployment. You talked about a jobs budget. And all we got was a paltry jobs initiative that was really just an excuse for a raid on pension funds of pensioners to fund and bolster the coffers of the government. Taoiseach, do you accept that there is an urgent need for action on jobs, that your policies to date have failed? And could you tell me what proposals you have now to deal with this crisis in relation to unemployment in the country?
Thank you. Taoiseach.
I think what the yesterday's figures show is that the single biggest problem that this country is faced with right now is the problem of unemployment. And the single biggest challenge that we have to address is how to get people back to work. That is something I think that everybody needs to be focused on, and that is what is at the centre of every single decision that government has made, and that government is making, and that government will make. And I expect it to be reflected in the statements which will be made next week in relation to the budget. On the issues, on the way in which we have sought to deal with it, as you know, the government brought in a jobs initiative in May. We have, as recently as last week, had a special cabinet meeting on the whole issue of employment, arising from which a number of measures were announced. The establishment of funds which will provide for the extension of credit and the availability of credit to small and medium-sized businesses in particular, and for start-ups in order to generate employment. We convened a Global Irish Economic Forum, the purpose of which was to bring together people from the Irish diaspora in order to help restore the country's reputation and to attract investment into this country. We have established the Strategic Investment Fund, which was a commitment that we made prior to the establishment of the government, the purpose of which is again to make money available in order to generate employment. We have established the new Economic and Recovery Authority, under which the semi-state agencies will operate, because they have a key role in the development of employment and the encouragement of investment here. And as I said, I expect that the budget statements next week will reflect the top priority which this government is giving to getting people back to work and to generating employment.
Thank you, Taoiseach. Deputy O'Keefe.
I have to say, Taoiseach, that you're absolutely powerful at the rhetoric, and I wish I had your gift of rhetoric. I'll give you some good examples. On the 9th of January 2000...
No, this is a supplementary question, actually.
Yeah, sorry.
You might learn something.
Supplementary question, please.
Yeah, I'm coming to the question.
Yeah.
On the 9th of January 2010, you said, one of the most shocking elements of all of this is the indifference of the government in the face of such live register figures, when they were better, when they were considerably better than now. On the 30th of June 2010, when will the government take seriously the issues of unemployment and getting people back to work. The actual reality of the matter is that in opposition, Fine Gael and Labour were great at talking the talk.
Sorry, could I have the question, please?
Yeah, I'm coming to the question.
Yeah, please. Yeah.
I'm coming to the question. Oh, I can think of the question. Don't you worry about it.
No, but you're over your time. That's what you should be worrying about.
I know, I am worrying
Yeah.
about it. I presume you take time outs every time to interrupt.
No, if you want to stop, to just keep going.
And you would have said anything in your grab for power. But the actual reality... The actual reality is that you're doing nothing for job creation. All you've done is cut capital expenditure,
Sorry, could we have a supplementary
deeper
question?
cuts in the public service, a VAT hike that will decimate many small retailers, changes in the social welfare code that are anti-enterprise. Can I ask you, Taoiseach, can I ask you, will you think again about these proposals, and will you bring in a genuinely pro-job budget next week?
If you wouldn't mind, please, there, we could do without the chorus just at the moment. Have the Taoiseach, please. The chorus is not required just at the moment, so could you have the Taoiseach? Thank you.
I stand over every word of what I said on the 30th of June 2010 and on the 9th of January. The last government was indifferent to the problem of unemployment and was indifferent to the necessity to create jobs in this country, and that is why we have such a high level of unemployment in this country. And the difference between the last government and this government is that it is the top priority. It is the #1 priority for this government because it is key. It is key. It is key to economic recovery to get people back to work. And that is why we have done the Jobs Initiative. That is why you mentioned social welfare. That is why we have brought in the Jobs Bridge, the labour activation measures in order to provide experience for people who can't get employment. That is why last week we announced 2 new funds for people who are establishing businesses and start-ups to get access to funding. That is why we set down limits, for example, for the banks for what they have to lend to small and medium-sized businesses in order to get people back to work. That is why we are encouraging investment from abroad. That is why we have put such an emphasis on restoring the country's reputation in order that employment will be created here. That is why too we successfully, even though you said we wouldn't succeed in doing so, that is why we successfully defended the rate of corporation tax in order to attract investment into this country. And that is why unlike the last government, Deputy O'Keefe, that you served in, every single day that this government is in office, we will work to get people back to work and to get employment and to get investment in this country.
Deputy Mary Lou MacDonald, please. Would you ask your backbenchers there to stay quiet? I've called you. So maybe your backbenchers will give you a chance now. Thanks.
Thank you, Count Corlett. Can I say to you, Taoiseach, that now that we have 448,600 people out of work, and you say that this is your top priority as a policy issue, heaven help us if that's you working to put jobs as the top priority. The figures yesterday reflect a 14.5 unemployment rate, and we also had figures, very shocking figures, in respect of the levels of poverty, the increase in poverty in our society. 22.5% reporting that they live in deprivation, and that means not being able to afford a warm coat, struggling to heat your home. That's the reality of where people are at. It seems to be lost on your colleague, Minister Varadkar. I don't see him here. Perhaps he's on a weekend break. Who, in a very brash and unacceptable manner, has said to the population at large to cheer up and to take a vacation. Or perhaps he's just telling them to take a hike. I want to ask you, Taoiseach, if Minister Varadkar's comments reflect the disposition of this government, that really everything is okay. I want to put it further to you, Taoiseach, to tell those people, almost 500,000 people who are out of work, that you are genuinely different, because I hear the same rhetoric. We'll increase lending to small and medium-sized business. We've heard that before, and not just from this government.
Thank you.
We will have jobs as our priority, and yet the evidence shows that the misery continues. And for the most part, people out of work don't see prospects of a job. For the most part, people see your administration as a carbon copy of the last government. So do you support Minister Varadkar's commentary? Will you apologise for his comments if you disagree with them? And let's then have a real commitment from you in respect of next week's budget that the unemployed and those living in poverty will be front and centre in the government's proposals.
Thank you.
Well, first of all, Minister Varadkar, among his responsibilities is tourism. And attending a tourism event yesterday, I understand that he made some remarks which were aimed at encouraging domestic tourism. That's what he does, and that's part of his job. You asked me the question, Deputy MacDonald, if the government thinks that everything is okay. No, we don't think everything is okay. We inherited, when we came into office, a country that was broken, public finances broken, the banks broken, morale of the people are broken. And yes, we have a problem in this, huge problem of unemployment, huge numbers of people who are out of work. And that in turn is related to the huge problems which you have described of people who are living in poverty and who are at risk of poverty. And this government is determined to deal with that issue. And we are determined that at the centre of dealing with that issue has to be getting people back into employment and getting jobs and investment in this country. And the strategies that we have been pursuing in order to do that is, first of all, in order to get investment into this country, we've had to restore the country's reputation. And I think we have made a very significant advance on that. We've had to communicate to people, potential investors outside of this country who are contemplating investing here, that this is a good country in which to invest. And we're succeeding in doing that. Secondly, we have to get the domestic economy moving again. And one of the huge problems that we've had in our domestic economy for some time now has been the problem that businesses have had in accessing finance and in accessing capital. And in particular, the problems that people who are starting up a business have in accessing capital. And both of those issues are being addressed and have been addressed by the government. Thirdly, we have the serious difficulty of people who have lost their jobs, or who, in the case of young people, who have yet to get their first job and who are experiencing a difficulty of not being able to get a job because they don't have experience, and not being able to get the experience because they can't get a job. And in order to address that, we have introduced the Job Bridge Initiative, the Internship Initiative. We are continuing to work on new labour activation measures in order to get people work experience so that they will be able to take up the job opportunities. And every single, and you know, I think all of us recognise, and I recognise, and I think every single member of this House recognises, and certainly the government recognises, that the big problem that we have to address here is getting people back to work. And I think we would be spending our time better here if members of the opposition were to come in with some positive proposals and ideas about how we want to do that, because that is something that we would certainly consider.
Thank you, Deputy MacDonald.
Well, Taoiseach, I notice that you haven't distanced yourself from Minister Varadkar's commentary, and whatever his role is in government, let me tell you, his role is not to add insult to injury to the unemployed and the deprived people of this state. And I hope that you're clear on that. You say that your efforts have been to rebuild this state's reputation. Well, what kind of a reputation does any state have when you have almost 500,000 languishing on the unemployment lines? And they're not statistics, they're people and their families. And you have a senior government minister who is so flippant in his commentary, less than a week in advance of a budget, that is going to be very hard on people. So you've taken €1 a day off Mr. Ray Burke in your much heralded fight against high pay.
Supplementary questions.
And you've left former Taoiseach on massive pensions. And out of the other side of your mouth, the government tell the struggling people of this state, cheer up, it's not going to be so bad, take a weekend break.
Sorry.
That is completely mad.
Could I have your question,
That's
please?
mad
You're over time.
politics.
Thank you.
And if that heralds what you propose to present to this Dáil and to the people in your budget next week, well then heaven help us. You say that your priority is getting people back to work.
You're way over time.
You've listed your initiatives. Taoiseach, your initiatives aren't working. So the question for you now is, what will you do differently? What new initiatives will you bring forward? And when will you demonstrate in real terms a seriousness about getting people back to work? Because the figures don't lie, and the figures reflect a scenario of failure from your government.
Ceann, this government will never add insult to the injury that people have experienced in this economy, who have lost jobs, who are having difficulty paying their mortgage, and who are having difficulty meeting their financial commitments. What this government is going to do, and what it is doing, is to work every single day to try and get people back to work. Now, it is a huge problem. And you set out the figures: 448,000 people who are on the live register, and we're talking, as you have said, about people who have lost jobs, who've had their family income situation turned upside down. We're talking about people, young people in particular, who haven't yet had the opportunity of getting into work. We're talking about very real problems and very real difficulties around the kitchen table, where people are trying to cope with these difficulties. And what the government, well, I've set out the fact, first of all, that this is the top priority for the government, to get our economy recovered so that we can get people back to work.
Thank you.
And every single action and every single decision that this government has taken since we came into office has been with that in view. And secondly, every single decision that we are taking from here on is aimed at getting people back into employment. And we will work at that every day. And you say it is not enough. Let me go further. Let me go further than that, Deputy MacDonald. It will never be enough until we get every single one of those 448,000 people back to work. That's our objective, and it is an individual objective. It's not about meeting this target or meeting that target. It's about getting people into employment, getting business moving again. It is a huge problem because we inherited an economy that was broken. We're working to fix it. We are having success, and we're going to continue doing that.
Thank you. Deputy Joe Higgins, please.
I would like to raise with you this morning the plight of a cohort of our people in this city and state who haven't been heard of or about for many months, who are being overlooked because they are ordinary working class people. They don't have the resources to hire expensive lawyers or have the resources to make large donations to the political establishment. They comprise between 2,000 and 3,000 families and individuals who were badly burned when the bills payment company called Home Payments Limited went into liquidation last August. Now, Taoiseach, you may know that this was a device by which people on low incomes, middle incomes, paid regularly into this company to assist them with routine utility bills, gas, electricity, etc., to pay on time and have the funds in readiness. Also used it to save for future costs like children's school books, school uniforms. Some families used it to save up for their children going to college, for medical and dental treatment perhaps as well. And Taoiseach, particularly at this time of year, many budgeted for Christmas-related expenditure and paid in using it as a savings bank. Now, families and individuals have been badly burned from some hundreds and a few thousand to numbers around 10,000. Now, former government ministers on the 150,000 pension a year or serving bankers in $500,000 a year wouldn't notice the likes of this. But for an ordinary family, this is an absolute fortune, representing a huge saving and sacrifice.
Have your question, please.
This company scandalously succumbed to the siren call of the property market and speculation therein. And again, ordinary people got burned. The company is in liquidation, so they will lose much of what was on deposit, and in any case there won't be a settlement, the liquidator tells me, if at all, until well into next year. Taoiseach, what I'm asking you is, with 3 weeks to go to Christmas, your government 4 weeks ago gave €700 million to speculators in Anglo-Irish banks to make good their bad debts that you weren't required to do. So with 3 weeks to go to Christmas, will you set up an emergency compensation fund for the victims of this company?
Thank you.
As you know, the state has compensated victims of flood, of storms, etc., quite rightly so. But this is as much a blow to these individuals and families as a storm or a flood. Will you set up an emergency fund now to ensure that these people are not really suffering unduly this Christmas?
Thank you. Taoiseach.
Well, I appreciate, Ceann Comhairle, that on leaders' questions there isn't advance notice given of the issue to be raised, and if I had advance notice of this particular issue, I would certainly have prepared a response for it. My sympathies, Deputy Higgins, are with those families and the people who, as you say, have got burned in this escapade. And what I will say is that if Deputy Higgins provides me with the details of the cases that he has raised, I will arrange to have that issue looked at by my colleagues in government and to let him have a full response on it.
Thank you. Deputy Higgins.
Well, thank you for that, Taoiseach. It's not surprising that it's not to the forefront of your consciousness because, as I said,
Sorry. This is a supplementary question, Deputy. So.
Taoiseach, you should actually tell them to maintain their silence until they hear the full sentence. To complete the sentence, I'm not surprised that it's not to the forefront of your consciousness because it hasn't featured since last August, which makes the point that poor people and people in these circumstances, ordinary working people, do not get the same consideration as, when the very wealthy take a dive. However, last August it was big news for a few days, and many people would be aware of it. Now, what I am asking you, Taoiseach, the details are easily available, and the plight of these families and individuals is easily available. So I'm asking you again, as a matter of principle, you don't need to know the particular details, to give an assurance that they will be assisted, and then things can be reconciled when the liquidation comes to its conclusion.
Thank you.
Lastly, Taoiseach, obviously people in these circumstances would be very dependent now on whatever assistance the state can give. So for them and for people generally dependent on that, can you tell us that you will honour the Labour Party pledge not to have a cut in child benefit in the budget?
Sorry,
the government pledged that social welfare payments will be maintained. And for the people who saved for their children's college fees, that the €500 increase put on by Fianna Fáil in college registration fees will be reduced or got rid of, as promised by the very minister sitting beside you, Deputy Quinn. That would also be a big assistance.
Honest.
Well, first of all, I'm not going to be tempted by the second and unrelated part of the Deputy's question to talk about next week's budget. But I do have to wonder that if we did comply with the requests made by Deputy Higgins, would he come in here next week and support the budget? In relation to the matter that he raised, let me say first of all, we want to deal sympathetically, this government will deal sympathetically with families who find themselves in financial difficulties. That is the policy and that is the approach of this government. Now, to be honest, Deputy Higgins, you too have had since last August to bring this issue forward here and to let us have the opportunity of considering it. We will consider it. You let us have the details of what you have available to you there, the information that you have on which you based the question. The government and my colleagues in government who have differing responsibilities in that area will look at that, and we will look at it on its merits, and we will look at it obviously with the sympathy that we approach issues where people are in financial difficulties. And I am acutely conscious, of course, of the time of year and the implications of that for the families concerned.
Thank you, Taoiseach. That completes